Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Career Choice Series webinar on administrative law. The Career Choice Series is designed to help you choose your career path. Whether you're a law student, young lawyer, or transitioning attorney, find out what it's like to work in various practice areas and the best way to position yourself to get there. The Career Choice Series is brought to you today by ABA Legal Career Central, Law Student Division, Young Lawyers Division, and the section of Administrative Law and Regulatory Practice. The ABA section of Administrative Law and Regulatory Practice is an important actual and virtual gathering place for lawyers practicing in every sector and serving in government, private practice, and academia who seek to explain and improve the functioning of administrative agencies to serve the public well. The Young Lawyers Division is here to help new lawyers navigate the early years of their career and law students prepare for life after law school. The Law Student Division offers premium benefits, which includes a savings of $250 on Barbary Bar Review, $25 off West Academic Casebooks, and a legal ethics bundle that includes a free Model Rules of Professional Conduct ebook. Upgrade to premium for $25. Sign up today at aba4lawstudents.com/go premium. ABA Legal Career Central is a career center that offers both career development resources and a job board for law students, lawyers, and other legal professionals across all disciplines and career stages. Today's moderator is Cheryl Rich Heisler. Cheryl is the president and founder of Law Alternatives, a career consulting company designed to help attorneys at all stages of their careers rethink and reevaluate their career options, whether inside or outside of the law. Previously, she practiced corporate law at Catmush and Zavis in Chicago and left the law to practice brand management with Kraft Incorporated. She regularly speaks at law schools and bar associations and has been interviewed or quoted in numerous media channels. She is a board member of ABA Legal Career Central. Cheryl, thanks so much for being here. I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Emily. Welcome, everybody. We have a great panel today. If you've got any questions about what it's like working for an administrative agency, working for the government, how you get there, what the secrets are to breaking in, this is your program. We are joined today by Nancy Isle, who's with the Appalachian Regional Commission, and Sam Weiss with the SEC. Part of what I love about both of our panelists, our faculty today, is that they come to this from different backgrounds, and they have reassured me to reassure all of you that there are a lot of ways into government or administrative practice. You can do a more traditional route like Sam. He'll tell us how he went through as a summer honors law clerk at the SEC to then move into an SEC regulatory practice. Nancy has had several jobs in the government, but has a connection to Appalachia because that's where her family is from. So whether you follow your heart, whether you follow your original inclinations and your internships, there are opportunities in government and administrative law, whether you start in it, whether you lateral in it, whether you come from a top 10 law school or someplace else. So we have wonderful panelists. I don't want to hold it up anymore. Let's turn around and open it up, and let's get started. We're going to talk, first of all, in terms of an overview of administrative law. And in each case, our panelists are going to talk to us about what they know, how they see their experiences, and what they learned from it. So if we advance the slide, we can start with Nancy about perhaps a little bit about what you do and how your role fits in under that very broad administrative law category.
Sure. Thank you, Cheryl, and nice to meet everybody on the phone. So I practice administrative law with the Appalachian Regional Commission, which is a small federal-state partnership located in Washington, D.C. And essentially, we give grants to develop the economy of Appalachia. So although we don't issue rulemakings and we're not publishing in the Federal Register like some larger regulatory agencies, which is what many people might think of when they think of administrative law, I consider myself an administrative lawyer because I practice law in the executive branch in administration. I'm not a political appointee. I'm a career attorney here, but essentially we're all administrative lawyers who are practicing the federal government. So that's my job in a nutshell.
Sam, can you add to? Sorry, Nancy, I'm going to cut you off, Sam. But can you give us your overview in a nutshell as well?
Sure. So at the SEC, I work on rule filing matters for self-regulatory organizations. Those are financial entities that have been given special powers by Congress to set the rules for the industry. And because they have those powers, including powers to do enforcement actions, set fines, all their rules had to be approved by the SEC. And so I'm one of the people who reviews those rules, prepares notices for the Federal Register, looks at comments, and then makes a decision whether to approve or disapprove the rule and write an order for the Federal Register.
So again, these are very broad brush strokes, but it's a way to get us started. So let's go on to the next slide, and we'll start to dig into some of the more predictive or questions that I think some of our listeners are going to be asking. Sam, let's start with you this time. What was your career path into your current role with the SEC?
So I had probably the more traditional career path where before law school, I actually worked on securities matters for the Congressional Budget Office. I then went to law school, and for my second summer, I worked at the Securities and Exchange Commission as what's effectively a summer associate. And I then got an offer to work in the SEC post-graduation, and I've been at the same position for nearly 3.5 years now.
And Nancy, what was your career path to get to where you are now?
Well, I think my bio might mention that I'm a second career lawyer. I had a previous career, and I graduated from Georgetown Law in 2008, and I had intended to start at one of those large law firms, one of the top 100, but my law firm dissolved before my start date. So I was supposed to start, I don't know, maybe in October, and I got a call. They originally, they pushed the start date forward, and then they went bankrupt. So I guess one of the two large law firms that year, I didn't intend to go into government necessarily because I wanted to pay back my loans to start. But I actually so I kind of feel like it was a kind of a stroke of fortune that I ended up in the government. And I started my career at a place called the Special Inspector General for Iraq Reconstruction. It no longer exists. It was a temporary agency, fairly small. And they were able to, they had special hiring authorities, so I was able to get into the government that way. And then obviously from there I went on, but anyway, it was I guess I would have had a completely different career if my firm hadn't dissolved, which at the time was awfully traumatic. But in the end, it really led to something that I'm very happy with.
So there's a certain amount of flexibility that everybody has to sort of build into their career pathing. So if you're out there listening, it's not always the way you set it out on paper. But the other thing I'd like to point out here is that while Sam, you came in from a traditional, summer associate role, Nancy, you lateraled in. So again, that's showing that there's more diversity getting into government. And while we're on this topic of diversity, you guys both went to pretty well-known law schools. Do you feel that you have to have that pedigree to get into a government agency?
I'll take that.
I don't. You want to take that one?
Oh, and the same thing. I don't feel like you need to go to a top law school, especially with something we see is people who are really interested in working in certain areas of the SEC. There are only a number of people who have that experience and have that interest, and it doesn't necessarily work with going to a top law school. I would much rather have somebody who's interested in a specific area of securities law than have somebody who graduated magna cum laude from Harvard but might not have an interest in it and is trying to use it maybe as a stepping stone to do something else.
So your background and your interests and what you care about and your passions play in going into the government as well as they do with many other fields of law and also non-legal careers.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
All right, so that's important for people listening to remember. If you do have a passion for a particular area of government agency or administrative work, consider it. But the flip is, don't just say I'm going to go into government if you don't have a particular area that you really care about. Let's go on to the next slide. So I know this is hard to break down in just a few short seconds, guys, but what does a typical day in your life entail? Nancy, why don't you take this one first?
Sure. Well, let's see. I'll start a little bit with my previous practice at SIGR, which Special Inspector General for Iraq Reconstruction, and there, I did a lot of work. It was a small office of general counsel. I did a lot of litigation support regarding an employment law issue. I worked on some white papers. I was actually spent some of my time writing, which I also did at DHS OIG. I led some interagency groups and wrote a lot, drafted reports. At DHS, when I worked at the Inspector General's office, I basically was an IG attorney at SIGER and DHS OIG, and that's the oversight function of the federal government. Every federal agency has a special an inspector general that is independent of but part of the agency it oversees. So I worked at DHS OIG with auditors, criminal investigators, inspectors, and other staff on supporting their work. We worked on everything from legal questions regarding the Secret Service, CBP investigations, some of the larger investigations that you might have read about in the paper, FEMA disaster response, cybersecurity, asylum issues, even public international law, really varied and broad. And I also had a large, I would say, written practice. I wrote a lot of written opinions there. And here, it's a very small agency. It's, a tenth or actually less than a tenth of the size of my former employer at Appalachian Regional Commission. And we do everything here that, that comes up, everything from employment to, everything IP issues. But my main bread and butter right now is reviewing and training on federal grant regulations. When grantees accept money from the federal government, or anytime money is accepted from the federal government with a grant or a contract or a subcontract, there are rules that need to be followed and laws, and that's really what I do most of the time.
And you're also working still with staff people who are non-lawyers?
Yeah, so here we have our staff is different, the clients are different. We have PhDs, we have specialists in broadband, transportation, healthcare, and different sectors in society, and economists, and I work with them to support their work. All right, so I still work with the IG. We have an IG, and I work very closely with him. He's very active. He does 30 reports a year, which is really a lot for such a small agency. But now I'm on the agency side, so I'm responding to the IG reports.
Sam, I'd love to hear about a day in your life, and also if you're interfacing with people who are outside of legal specialists.
Sure. So I'll go through the process of what I do for doing a rule filing.
Okay.
And in a day in my life, I'll be doing different parts of it for different rule filings in a day. So first, I'll usually get a draft rule filing, provide any comments upon that. Then when it's officially filed, I'll prepare the rule filing for the Federal Register, wait for any comments, and then prepare an order and do that in consultation usually with PhD economists at the SEC to see if they agree with any of the assessments, especially because we have to make assessments based upon promoting the formation of capital, protecting investors, and where it really helps to have a PhD economist look at the issue. And sometimes also I'll meet with commenters and members of the public who wish to talk about a specific rule filing.
So it's interesting that this is, in each case, there are a broader band of specialists who get involved. So you're not just in an office sitting alone, either drafting or reviewing. You're absolutely working with people who have different economic and intellectual and regulatory backgrounds. So that's something to remember, that nobody operates in a bubble anymore. Let's go ahead to the next slide. Mm-hmm. What do you guys each love and hate about your positions? And related to that, what are some of the challenges that you face on a day-to-day basis? Sam, will you give us your thoughts on this first?
The first thing I love is being able to act in the public interest. In a lot of jobs, your client is, especially in the private sector, your client is whoever's hired you, who their interests might not align with what's best for the public. And that's true even if you work for maybe an advocacy agency or like some place like the ACLU, where the client's interests might not benefit the policy interests you're trying to accomplish. But at the SEC, we're able to say this is what's best for the public and take that long view. I guess one thing I hate is, I guess, all the steps involved with something to do a rule filing. that it's a complicated process and it's a long process under the APA because it wants to make sure for the government having this authority that it's done right.
So you've got the public interest at heart, but there's still a lot of steps you have to go through. Nancy, do you have those same kinds of issues?
Well, I would say I would answer the question differently. What I love, I love about exactly what Sam said about being in the public sector and working for the public good. I think that motivates most public interest attorneys and most of those working for the government, and most people are in it because they feel very strongly about the issues they work on. They feel like they're doing good work, and you're not always worried about billing in 10-minute increments for at the end of the day money. One of the things I love, so I love that, and I find that very motivating. And I also just love, I love my actual job. I love the people I work with here at this place. It's a very nice place. I love my boss. I love my colleagues. So I think that's so important. And that could be anywhere. That can be in government. That could be in a firm practice. That could be doing anything. I think it's just so important to find that fit, whatever's right for you. I don't think that the answer, what we love or hate and necessarily will apply across the board to government, because there are some really bad places in government. You can read about them, and you don't want to go there. So wherever you're going, it definitely is a good practice to find out what it's like before you go, and then join and make sure it fits with what you want in your life.
Nancy, that's a good segue. We received a question about whether or not when you found out your firm went out of business that you ended up going to government. Did you find yourself looking and making multiple applications, or at that point in time did you go, yes, government is what I wanted to do? When you think about fit and what's important to you.
No, I actually went all over the world, and I mean, that's a whole other story. I went all over the world looking for a job, and I actually did get a job as a telecommunications attorney at an international telecommunications firm. But I also interviewed with the government and didn't realize how fascinating it could be. I guess I didn't really know much about it, and so I turned the other job down and went with the government.
That's
but
great.
I applied all over the place. I did not cast my net small. I cast it very wide. But the thing is, that was in 2008. And people were being fired. Nobody was being hired. It was a very difficult time. So I really think, but my goal was to get a job practicing law. That's why I went to law school, and that's why I worked so hard for 3 years. Definitely not to get a job doing anything else. So, then when there was a choice, then I chose the government.
Let's go off the slides for a second and talk about timing. Right now we hear that there are a lot of government jobs that are going unfilled. Is this a good time to go into government, you guys? Do you see a need? Do you see growth in government opportunities?
I see long-term growth in government opportunities just because a lot of the government workforce is aging and either near retirement age or already retirement eligible. Right now, it's not necessarily the best time because there are a lot of agencies who haven't had their budget increase since 2015. So they simply don't have the money to hire new employees. But that'll likely change in the next 2 to 3 years.
Nancy, do you agree?
I don't know that there's a good or bad time to go into government. I don't know how much what we're hearing about really will affect us. I do know that there are hiring freezes. That's true. But then again, we don't know how long they'll last. I think any time is a good time to do what you want to do. Like with me in 2008, it wasn't a good time to be looking for a job at all. It wasn't a good time to be practicing law, for that matter. Definitely not a good time to be a new law graduate. But I wouldn't be discouraged by what we hear in the papers. I would just keep on trying. But it's hard to see in the crystal. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen. I think if you get motivated by working, something in the public sector, nonprofit, it's always a good time.
That's a great point. It's the kinds of thing, and as a career counselor, I'm very big on the things that motivate you. Let's advance the slide and talk about some of the other issues. What do you think are the top 3 skills someone needs to have to work and succeed in your individual yet government, that you share government overview, but your different positions? Sam, what would you say the 3 top skills are for your area?
So the first is attention to detail. just because there are so many requirements for doing regulatory work. And if you miss one step or don't do it correctly, the DC Circuit is going to get mad at you and overturn what you're doing. The second thing is writing, just because it'll involve a lot of writing,
Sure.
whether writing memos to other staffers or writing notices in the Federal Register. And the third is just having an open mind, that a lot of stuff you'll come to for the first time. You'll having to be deal with people who are outside your expertise and issues such as economics that might be outside your expertise. And so just be understanding of your limitations and being willing to ask for help.
That's important for everybody. Nobody knows everything. Nancy, what would you say the top 3 skills are for someone in a position similar to yours?
Well, I've had several different positions, and I think different particular skill sets might be important for each job. I think overall, though, one of the things that is very important is flexibility. So obviously you have to write, you have to be able to analyze and present ideas succinctly and communicate well, but I think that flexibility is so important because you never know where your career will take you. You might have a plan and it might not be exactly, things might happen that another opportunity might come up, or your plan might not go as well as you planned, or might go differently. And so I think that flexibility and just keeping an open mind and following this great adventure of career, I think that's important. At least it has been for me, and I've been very happy with that. Just being flexible. And I also think the other skill I would say is that I think is important is to be a self starter, to be self-motivated. At least it seems to me to be important. I don't know if everybody would feel that way, but there are a lot of opportunities in government and outside government, and I feel strongly that you find them by seeking them, by doing them, by making your job, what you want it to be, and looking for the job that you want. So I think it requires internal motivation. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think that's true for any good job hunt. Emily, can you please show us the surprise slide? Because perfect. So one of the things that we've been talking about as we plan for this program is what would people be surprised to know about the application process? And we've got some ideas here for our listeners about the how-tos of getting into government jobs. So one of the surprises to me as we talked about it is that there are different areas where jobs in government get posted. It's not always the same for each agency. There are different postings, there are different codings. Sam, Nancy, would you guys demystify the process for us just a little bit if someone is trying to break into government?
I'll start.
Sam, jump in, please.
So just in general, if you're applying for a government job, it doesn't necessarily have to be posted on USA Jobs. So that's one of the most important things to know, is that especially depending on the agency, they might post it on their website, they might have a resume bank or something else. And so, for instance, that's something the SEC has, is that as you can see in the link here on the bottom, the SEC actually has a resume bank link. And so when there's a hiring need, usually what the hiring manager will do is go to that resume bank, get about the 200 resumes that are in the resume bank, and then select somebody from that list. And there'll likely never be a USA Jobs posting for that position.
So for all the people who are combing usajobs.gov thinking they're going to find everything, this is an aha moment. There may be agency-specific places you go, and related to that, the value of networking with people who work for a government agency is that even if they can't help you because jobs, there's a certain process the government follows, they can at least tell you where to go to post your resume, where to go to be found, correct?
Yes.
Nancy, how about your sort of surprise aha for people who are trying to break into an agency or an administrative law role?
Well, I agree with that very much, that you have to find, there are different agencies that don't publish at usajobs.gov as a rule, like Sam's agency. The intelligence community probably doesn't post all their jobs, probably the Federal Reserve Board. So you need to go to each individual agency's website to find out where they post. I think that the surprise for me is that I've heard a lot of people say, and it might be true to some extent, that USA Jobs is, possible, that you can't get a job. But I have gotten a job at usajobs.gov with no contacts. So it can be done. It might take a while. It might be quite a while. I've heard of one attorney who was a 7th-year or so associate who looked for 7 years for a job in the government through usajobs.gov and finally got an interview after 7 years and got a job. So it can be done. It's just a lot of work. The other thing, as I was mentioning to you the other day, is that you might want to do a search on USA Jobs by OPM classification, like 0905 is the attorney classification, and there are other jobs that attorneys can apply for that, like 1810, something like a program analyst, or even criminal investigator, 1811. They wouldn't be practicing law, but they could expand their search out. If they don't just want to practice law, there are a lot of other jobs in the government that you can use your law degree for, but you wouldn't be practicing law. So
this concept of OPM classification, attorney jobs, non-attorney jobs, it's important to know what classification you're applying to, and that's going to determine where you may find some of the jobs that you're looking for, that you're seeking out. What about this concept versus status jobs versus exempt jobs? I know that there's some preference for veterans when you apply for governmental jobs. Can you explain that to our listeners?
Right. Well, all attorneys are accepted service in the federal government, so they actually technically don't have to even be, the jobs, don't have to be advertised. Most of them are, I would think, but it depends on the agency. But accepted service does not consider things as, veterans service and stuff like that. So, theoretically, you would have an equal playing field with everybody when you apply for a 0905 position.
That, for somebody like me who's outside the administrative law bubble, that was really an interesting learning, that there are different, first of all, the different OPM codes, but also that there are different rules that apply. Emily, let's go on to our next slide and ask everybody, Nancy and Sam at least, how has ABA involvement helped you in getting and keeping the jobs you like? And by the way, the ABA thanks you for being involved in a program like this and sharing that information with our other listeners. Sam?
Just as a little background, I've been involved with the ABA since I was in law school. I was actually the student liaison to the administrative law section, and that's one of the opportunities that I encourage everybody who's a student to try to do, because you get to know practitioners, the hiring managers. For instance, the current head of IRA was involved with the council when I was on it, and it's helped me by just knowing some of who the players are, being able to help see actually policy issues and help on those where the ABA lobbies Congress, and also to be able to give an avenue for writing where I've regularly written in the administrative law section's blog and been able to see what some of the ideas that others people are talking about and try to comment upon those.
Nancy, have you been involved in the ABA all throughout, or is it just something that you're giving back to in ways like this now?
No, actually, just like you, Sam, I was also a student liaison to the ABA Administrative Law section when I was in law school, and it was a great experience. I got, as Sam said, I got to meet practitioners and, kind of feel like I was starting to practice law while I was in law school. And I really recommend getting involved in the ABA or another, organization where you actually meet practitioners and, get a taste of what it's like practicing law. But I think ABA has been a great resource. I really enjoy getting I belong to several sections, and I enjoy getting copies of the newsletters and the articles and follow the blogs. It helps me keep up on a day-to-day basis with what's going on in different areas of law. And it's also a great place to meet people, a great place to network at some of the events after work.
Also, my involvement with Legal Career Central has shown me, too, how broad the ABA is in terms of providing programming in the case of these career choice series, what alternatives there are. So the ABA is a fantastic addition and a resource to anybody who's thinking about job change, career change. Emily, let's go on to our next slide and really throw it open for the next couple of minutes. We've got our panelists who can just stay a few more minutes with us. Anybody have any questions? I know the question about networking within the government is always something I want to know about. We've talked about a little bit about this amongst ourselves, but Sam and Nancy each, how would you use your ability to network to help you in getting a governmental job?
I'd use networking to know how the openings are posted. So a lot of places for USA jobs, they're not posted there. So just to know where you're wanting to work, how to know about the application when it opens, when there is a posting on a website or USA jobs, it might have a short period, so to know about it as soon as possible. The other thing is, depending on how much you have network, for instance, if you've been an intern there, that'll especially help that once you apply, that your application is pulled, and so you get an interview. It won't necessarily actually give you the job itself, but it'll make sure that you're in the running.
And to help you understand what goes on a day-to-day basis. I mean, even a program like this is essentially a kind of networking, because anybody who's lucky enough to be listening is hearing the two of you talk about what your jobs are like and what somebody needs to know and who they need to reach out to. Nancy, you want to add anything to that networking question?
Well, as far as looking for a job goes, I think that if I were looking for a job, I would be networking all the time, just to expand that net quite broadly and meet as many people as I could, because all of us aren't aware of all the different opportunities that are out there to practice law. So the more people you talk with, the more chances you are to come across some new idea, maybe a new possible employer, a new agency you didn't even know existed. So it's about sharing information and also just, meeting people and you just never know where that opportunity might arise.
There's one question that we'll try to answer, and then we really do have to cut off. I'm sorry, because you guys are really, really wonderful sources of information. Is there anything to do when you make a resume or an application to a government position that'll help you stand out? Or for that matter, any particular classes you'd recommend somebody take in law school that will get noticed? My guess is it's going to vary a lot by the different agency, but I don't know if there are any rules of thumb.
That's actually the number one thing I'd say, is that there is no resume for a government job. For instance, at the SEC, for a summer intern, we don't just want somebody who's interested in the government. We want somebody who's interested in financial services. So to emphasize that. And then when you're looking for a job, we have a number of different divisions, and we're not just necessarily looking for somebody who's interested in securities work. We're interested, for instance, in enforcement, that you're interested in doing enforcement actions for the SEC. Or if you're going to investment management, that you're interested in dealing with mutual funds or something like that.
So that what you put in your resume should reflect what the agency does, not just the fact that it's a governmental agency.
Yeah, not only that, not just what the agency does, but what the specific job you're applying for does.
And that would make sense in a broader world too. You want to let the organization know, whoever it is, that you're really interested in what they do and how they do it. Sam, I'm going to give you one more second before we have to cut off, because you talked a little bit before about the jobs you would get perhaps pre-going to a job in the government.
So definitely interning for the government helps. If you are in a position where, especially now where there's a lot of hiring freezes, where the job you want isn't available, you can go to firms. Also, state government, local government's a great avenue. And for instance, in securities, there are state governments, attorney generals, state secretaries of states that have securities offices. There are other big organizations like FINRA that have a lot of securities people. And for government in general, there's people especially like government experience, even if it's not at the federal level. It's beneficial to show the interest in government work.
Nancy, Sam, I don't know where this half hour went. I can't believe we're out of time already. Emily, let me give it back to you. But on behalf of the ABA and Legal Career Central, I really want to thank you guys for your time and your concise and really relevant information. I know a lot of the people who are listening in have benefited. I know I have. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Cheryl, for moderating, and Nancy and Sam for all your insight. This has been really informational. Thank you all for attending today's program. Please be sure to check out our website at ambar.org/careers for upcoming free career-related articles and webinars. There are recordings of past programs on our website, and right now on your screen are some of our upcoming programs. You can also connect with us on social media, and you can learn more about the Legal Career Central Board on our About page. Before leaving, please complete our short survey. Thanks again, and have a great day.